Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. We're diving into the icy veins of the Soviet Union, into the barbed wire realm of the Gulag. Not the textbook version, not the censored memoirs, but the real, bleak, brutal experience of waking up as just another number in a Soviet forced labor camp. Before we step through those iron gates, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment letting me know at what time it is where you're watching from. I always love seeing who's tuning in from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum. Let the hum settle your nerves. Let the quiet start to take hold. And let's slip together into tonight's story. Tonight's journey. What life was really like for Soviet Gulag prisoners. The Gulag system, short for Glavnoye Upravlenie Lagery, or Main Camp Administration, wasn't just one camp. It was an entire hidden country within a country. A massive, decentralized system of forced labor colonies, punishment camps, and so-called corrective labor facilities. Between 1930 and 1955, millions of men and women passed through them. Some for crimes, some for beliefs, some for being in the wrong place at the wrong time when a neighbor whispered the wrong name. This was not a place of rehabilitation. It was a system of quiet, grinding death. But tonight, you're not just learning about it. You're living it. You're going to wake up on a lice-ridden bunk inside a frost-bitten wooden barrack. You'll drag yourself out of a filthy blanket, chew on frozen bread, and march under armed guard to fell trees, dig canals, or mine uranium, until your body gives out. You'll learn the rhythm of rations and punishment, the vocabulary of despair, the smell of wet wool, blood, and industrial dust. You'll feel the cold in your lungs, the paranoia in your chest, the hunger in your bones. And through it all, you'll carry the dull hope, never spoken, barely formed, that maybe tomorrow won't be worse than today. This is not an adventure. This is survival. And the strangest part? The Gulag wasn't built in secret. It was part of daily Soviet life. Your friends knew, your co-workers, maybe your family. And yet, the machine rolled on. So tonight, let's shut the door on the outside world. The notifications, the emails, the electric world buzzing at your fingertips, and instead, step into the silence of a world made of snow, steel, and silence. We're going to walk through the Gulag not as historians, but as silent observers. You won't be the hero. You won't be the villain. You'll just be a human being, assigned a number, issued a threadbare coat, and forgotten in the backlogs of Soviet bureaucracy. But don't worry, you won't be alone. I'll be right here with you, quietly narrating, as you slowly drift into the harsh rhythm of another life, another time, and another kind of sleep. Welcome to the Gulag. You wake up before the sun, not because of an alarm clock. There is no clock, no gentle chime, no soft light. Just the sound of iron boots on wood, and the sharp, nasal bark of a guard shouting something you can't quite understand. But you know you should move. The air is still, heavy, cold in a way that feels alive. Your eyes open to a dim, gray haze. You're on a wooden plank, not a bed, not a cot. Just a splintered shelf shoved into the corner of a long, freezing barrack. You share it with two other bodies, one above you, one below. You don't know their names. You've forgotten to ask, or maybe you just learned not to. The blanket wrapped around you is wool, coarse and damp. It doesn't warm you so much as trap your smell. Sweat, mud, mildew, human fear. You try not to breathe too deeply. There's no pillow, just a folded jacket, stiff with dried sweat and lice. You shift and feel them crawling. Small, determined survivors like you. They bite, but not too much. They're the only ones here with a routine. The barrack is a long wooden structure, nailed together with frost-bitten hope and Soviet efficiency. The walls are thin, and wind whistles through the seams. There's no insulation, no stove, just a metal pipe that runs down the center of the room, glowing faintly with coal heat, only when it works. This morning, it's ice cold. No one says anything. Complaints cost calories. Outside, it's still dark. It's always dark when the day starts. You sit up slowly. Your back cracks, your knees ache. The wood beneath you is hard, damp from condensation, and layered with decades of human suffering. Some prisoners carve messages into it. Small scratches, names, prayers. You don't. You're not sure you believe in anything anymore. Except maybe lunch. Maybe. Around you, the others start to stir. Men coughing, deep, wet coughs that never seem to end. One mutters in his sleep. Another rolls over and groans. There's a soft squelch as someone vomits into a bucket by the wall. No one reacts. It's not worth reacting to. You pull your legs over the edge of the bunk and feel the floor. Cold, packed earth covered with a slick mix of mud, human waste, and wood ash. Your socks are wet instantly. You haven't had dry socks in days. Maybe weeks. Maybe forever. The guard outside kicks the door open. Light spills in, but it's not warm. Just gray, pitiless morning seeping through snow and frost. You squint. Snow blows through the open doorway. The guard yells again, and this time it's clear. Na vychod! Outside. Time to line up. You throw on your jacket. It's thin. The cotton padding inside has mostly rotted away. Your boots are too large. Second-hand from a prisoner who didn't need them anymore. They flop as you walk. The soles are worn through. The cold bites up from below like a feral dog. You wrap a scarf around your neck. Not for warmth, for dignity. The others shuffle out with you. No talking, no laughing. Conversation is saved for the brave, the foolish, or the dying. Outside, the camp is awake. The snow crunches under boots, thick and unforgiving. Barbed wire surrounds the compound. Gray towers loom in the corners, each with a guard inside. Rifle slung, silhouette stiff, unmoving. Watching. Always watching. The air smells like smoke, coal, urine, and despair. You can't see the sun, but you know it's morning because the routine has begun. Men form ranks like sluggish ants, shoulders hunched, heads down. You follow the line. The snow stings your face. Somewhere someone is already being hit. You hear the snap of a stick on skin, a grunt, a muffled curse. It's not you, not yet. Small blessings. The morning count begins. A guard with a clipboard walks up and down the rows. He doesn't make eye contact, just counts. 1, 2, 3. Sometimes aloud, sometimes not. If the numbers don't match, the day doesn't start. If someone's missing, the search begins. If they don't find them, well, the punishment finds everyone. Someone sneezes, another faints. The body hits the ground with a dull thud. No one moves to help. You've all learned. After roll call, it's time for the latrine. You make your way across the yard to a wooden shed. No door, just a hole in a board. Inside, 2 wooden planks over a pit. No walls, no partitions. Just cold air and the collective shame of dozens of men doing what must be done in plain view. You don't look, you don't speak. You do what's necessary and move on. You rinse your hands with snow. That's your hygiene. No soap, no hot water. Just whatever ice you can grab to scrape the filth from your skin. If you're lucky, there's no blood on it today. Back in line. There's a pause now. A short one. 10 minutes maybe, if the guards are distracted or drunk. You sit on a stump, or squat, or just close your eyes and pretend you're somewhere else. A bed, a home, a warm room with soft lights and music. You almost remember what music sounds like, but then the voice returns. A name is shouted. It's yours. Work assignment. You don't choose what you do here. The camp chooses. Sometimes it's forest clearing. Sometimes it's mining. Sometimes it's dragging logs through half-frozen rivers until your arms stop working. Sometimes it's standing in the cold doing nothing at all, which somehow hurts more. But before the work, there's the meal, or what passes for one. A tin bowl is shoved into your hand. A ladle dips into a pot and gives you a splash of something called balanda, hot water with a few floating grains of millet. If there's a potato chunk, it's a good day. You drink it quickly, not because it tastes good, it doesn't, but because it's warm, and because everyone else is already done. Slower men lose their food to hungrier ones. Then a heel of bread. Dark, dense, brick-like. You chew it slowly. Make it last. You think about hiding some for later, but you already know you'll eat it now. Every meal might be your last. You swallow the last bite as the guard yells again. Work begins. Your body protests. Your stomach growls. Your feet are numb. But none of it matters. You march out through the open gate, past the towers, past the wires, into the endless white beyond. The forest, the fields, the mines. Whatever awaits, and behind you, the camp exhales, the barracks empty, the silence returns, and the snow continues to fall. You don't wake up hungry. You wake up already starving. It's not the kind of hunger that growls or grumbles. It's the deep, silent ache in your belly that never leaves. A dull, gnawing sensation that lives inside your ribs, your throat, your bones. You stopped dreaming of full plates a long time ago. Now you just hope to make it to the next bowl of anything that's warm. You line up for the morning ration. It's barely light outside, but the kitchen is already active. Kitchen is a generous word. It's more like a long shack with rusted pots, steam-stained walls, and one trembling prisoner ladling out soup in silence, under the watchful eye of a bored guard with a cigarette dangling from his lip. You hold out your tin bowl. He doesn't look at you. He just scoops and pours. Balanda. Again. It's always balanda. Hot water with a few flakes of oats, maybe some barley if they're feeling generous. The liquid is thin, yellowish, with a strange metallic taste that clings to your tongue. You don't ask what's in it. You learned not to. Sometimes there's grease floating on top. Sometimes not. Sometimes it smells like nothing. Sometimes like wet burlap and old cabbage. But it's hot. And that's what matters. You drink it fast before it cools. You try to ignore the bitterness. The bottom of the bowl is always disappointing. Grainy residue, a few soggy kernels, a hair, maybe a dead fly. Doesn't matter. You scrape it clean with your finger, then lick the finger. This is your first and best meal of the day. Then comes the bread. It's handed to you in a chunk, dense and dark, with the texture of dried clay. This is kleb, and it's more important than your own name in this place. Rationed by weight, not by feeling. Sometimes 600 grams, sometimes 400, sometimes less. Depends on your work performance, your mood, your guard's mood, or what someone whispered about you last night. You hold your piece close like a relic. You want to eat it all now. You want to devour it. But you don't. You can't. The smart ones break it in half, or thirds. Hide some in a sock, inside their coat lining, under the mattress if they dare. Because later, when your hands are shaking and your stomach turns in on itself, that last bite of bread might be the only thing keeping you from giving up. Of course, hiding food is dangerous. If the guards catch you, punishment. If another prisoner catches you, theft. If the rats catch you, too late. So you eat half, chewing slowly, eyes down, while the others do the same. No one talks. Not here. This isn't a breakfast table. This is survival. You've eaten, if that's the word. Now hygiene. And yes, technically, the camp has facilities for it. But don't imagine faucets and soap. You trudge through snow to the washroom, a freezing shack with a cracked concrete floor, a broken water tank, and rusted pipes that leak more lies than water. If water comes at all, it's freezing, not cold. Freezing, literally. The kind of water that bites your fingers and turns your knuckles white. You splash it on your face quickly, barely touching your cheeks before pulling away. There's no towel, just your sleeve. It's stiff with old sweat, but it's all you have. You rinse your mouth next. No toothbrush, no paste, just water and your finger. Rub across your teeth. Maybe a twig, if you found one on the way in. Some chew charcoal. Others rub their gums with salt when they can get it. You can't today. You spit into the corner and walk out. Your teeth ache anyway. Many are already gone. The bread is so hard it breaks them. The cold infects them. You know men here who pulled their own molars with a spoon and a bottle of rot gut. The real hygiene crisis, though, isn't what's outside your body. It's what's living on it. Lice. Endless lice. You scratch constantly. neck, back, waistline. The bugs are everywhere. In your blanket, your coat seams, your underwear, if you're lucky enough to have any left. They don't care if you're political, criminal, innocent, guilty, Russian, Ukrainian, Jewish, Chechen. The lice believe in equality. The camp offers delousing once a month. Maybe. It's an ordeal. You line up naked in the cold, shivering, teeth clacking, while your clothes are thrown into a coal-heated chamber. You pray they come back out in one piece. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. The guards don't care. They spray you with kerosene. Literally douse your skin in chemicals. It stings your eyes. It burns your cuts. You're told not to inhale, but how else are you supposed to breathe? When it's done, you pull your wet clothes back on and return to your bunk, slightly cleaner and absolutely colder. The lice return within days. There's no soap. Not really. Some prisoners manage to steal or barter for a sliver. A chunk of lye. Crude. Harsh. Smells like death and burns like regret. But it helps. You scrape some onto your fingernail. Rub it under your armpits, between your toes, over your sores. If it hurts, it's working. Baths? Rare. If your camp has one, it's a room with rusty tubs and mold-covered tiles. Maybe once a month you're allowed in. The water is reused. One tub. 20 men. No rinsing. No privacy. You don't soak. You don't relax. You just hurry. The smell in the room is beyond description. A stew of old sweat, mildew, blood, and skin. The kind of air that settles into your lungs and never leaves. And after the bath, you put the same filthy clothes back on, because there's nothing else. No change, no laundry, just wet rags on a body that already feels infected. You itch constantly. You bleed. You develop sores that won't heal. And that's the best case scenario. Because when hygiene fails, and it will, it turns into disease. Scurvy, dysentery, typhus, tuberculosis. Every cough in the barracks is a warning. Every man with sunken cheeks and red-rimmed eyes is a mirror of what you might become in just a few weeks. You wash when you can. Not to feel clean, that dream is long gone. You wash to feel human, even for a few seconds. And when that fails, you scratch, you sit, you breathe, and you wait for work. Because whether you're clean or not, sick or not, the labor won't wait, and the guards won't care. You don't own clothes in the Gulag. You wear what you're given, and what you're given was probably worn by someone else who either froze to death, got transferred, or disappeared during the night. There's no wardrobe, no choice, no personal style, just the standard issue uniform of suffering. Your coat is cotton padded, supposedly. But most of the padding has been compressed by months or years of wear, so it feels more like a cold, damp blanket that someone tried to turn into a jacket using only frustration and string. The fabric is coarse, always damp, smells like mold. The collar is fraying, and one sleeve hangs longer than the other. There are holes in the lining, perfect homes for lice and body heat to escape, in that order. Your trousers are worse. They're baggy and stiff, made from a cheap wool blend that seems to absorb cold the way a sponge absorbs water. There's no elastic, no belt, just a thin rope if you're lucky. You tie it tight, and hope it doesn't slip while you're hauling logs or climbing frozen scaffolding. Underneath? Depends. Some prisoners have long underwear. Most don't. If you do, it's full of holes. If you don't, the wool scratches your legs raw. And if your trousers freeze during the night, you simply crack them like sheet metal in the morning and put them on anyway. Socks? If you can call them that. Usually just fabric rags tied around your feet. If you're lucky, you find a real sock in the clothing bin, but odds are it has more holes than threads. You wrap more cloth around it. Old shirt sleeves, torn underwear, whatever's not already claimed by the rats. And then your boots. They're the most important thing you own, even though you don't really own them. They're assigned, distributed, recycled. They're rubber Valenki, if you're lucky. Thick felt winter boots, cracked and stiff. Or maybe they're leather, old, splitting, with soles worn down to nothing. Or maybe you're just given galoshes, overshoes meant for spring puddles, not Siberian frost. The kind that fill with snow the moment you take a step. No matter what they are, they don't fit. One's too tight, one's too loose. You stuff them with paper, straw, old socks, anything to plug the gap between your skin and the outside world. But it doesn't work. Your toes still go numb. You can feel the frost climbing from the soles upward every day, like it's trying to claim your body 1 inch at a time. You know the signs of frostbite by now. The tingling, the sudden warmth, the skin that turns pale, then blue, then black. Men lose fingers, toes, noses, ears, and sometimes, when the guards are bored, they laugh about it. Ah, look, Petrov's turning into a statue. Your hat is a cotton cap with ear flaps. In theory, it protects you from the cold. In practice, it soaks up sweat, freezes overnight, and leaves your ears burning from the wind. The flaps are torn, the strap's gone. You tie it under your chin with twine. Sometimes, prisoners sew their own additions, scarves made from mattress stuffing, mittens from bits of torn blankets. Anything to keep the cold out. But nothing really works. There's no insulation for your soul. The cold is constant, inside and out. And then there's your shelter. You call it a barrack, that's the official term. But it's not a building. It's a wooden box. A long rectangular box made of rough pine logs stacked without care, sealed with mud and frozen urine, and packed with human beings like winter livestock. The floor is dirt. It freezes in winter. It turns to sludge in spring. Sometimes they lay planks across it. Most of the time, you just deal with it. There's no paint on the walls, just graffiti. Names, numbers, dates, some scratched with spoons, some carved with nails, some just written in blood or soot. Moscow, 1949. Forgive me, Mother. I am still here. There's one small window, if any. Usually it's covered in ice. No glass. Just a scrap of plastic or oiled paper. The wind comes through anyway. The air smells like everything. Smoke, mildew, wet clothes, rotten feet, sweat, diarrhea, blood, and the constant reek of unwashed bodies. There's no ventilation, no fresh air. Only the bitter cold air that leaks through the cracks. You sleep on a bunk, 3 levels, wooden planks nailed together. No ladder, no mattress, no padding. Just a flat surface that creaks when you move and splinters if you roll too far. If you're lucky, you're on the middle bunk. The top bunk gets the most heat, but the heat is mostly smoke. The bottom bunk gets the most rats. You've seen them chew through someone's boot while they were still wearing it. You share your bunk with another prisoner, maybe two. There's no privacy, no boundaries. You sleep back to back for warmth. If someone snores, you don't complain. If someone dies in the night, you wait until morning to report it. In winter, your breath freezes on the inside of the barracks, creating delicate frost patterns on the walls. They almost look beautiful. You stop noticing. At night, the barracks groan and shift with the wind. You hear footsteps. You hear whispers. You hear men coughing until they vomit, until they stop coughing. There's a stove in the center, a metal drum filled with coal, or sometimes just wood scraps and paper. It burns when the guards allow it, which isn't often. And even when it's lit, it warms only the 5 men closest to it. You've learned to sleep in your coat, your boots, your hat. You curl up like a fossil, hands under your arms, face to the wall. And if you wake up with your hands stiff, your lips cracked, your pillow soaked with condensation, you thank whatever part of you still believes in something that you woke up at all. Shelter is a suggestion in the Gulag. Warmth is an illusion. Clothing is armor made of scraps and desperation. And dignity? Dignity is what you shed in layers, like skin, until there's nothing left but a thin shell of habit, fear, and silence. You don't work to live in the Gulag. You work so they don't beat you, so they don't cut your rations, so they don't mark you for special punishment. Work is the only thing keeping you barely fed and barely alive, but it is also the thing slowly killing you. There is no calendar here, no weekends, no holidays, just the endless rhythm of forced labor. Wake, march, work, march, eat, sleep, repeat, until your lungs give out or your spine shatters. The day begins while it's still dark. The guards yell, the dogs bark. You're on your feet before your eyes even focus. There's no time to wake up, no time to stretch. You throw on your crusted coat, shove your numb feet into frozen boots, and shuffle out into the snow to line up for the morning count. Roll call is cold and silent. You stand in a column of hollow-eyed men, all blinking into the wind, each of you wondering if today is the day your body quits pretending it's functional. Once the numbers match, you're assigned your brigade. You don't get a say. Some days it's tree felling, lumber work in the frozen taiga. Other days it's road building, mining, canal digging, hauling logs, carrying bricks, repairing fences, carrying other prisoners who collapsed. Work isn't just physical, it's mathematical. Every task has a quota. Cut down 2.5 cubic meters of timber, break 3.2 tons of rocks, lay 50 meters of track, fill 5 wheelbarrows with gravel. Do less? Your bread ration is cut. And if you do far less, you're a non-fulfiller. That label sticks. Once you're on that list, you're marked, watched, targeted. Your food shrinks. Your beatings increase. Sometimes they send you to the punishment brigade. That's where the real work begins. You start the long march to the site. through forests, across icy rivers, over hills that seem designed just to hurt you. No transportation, no carts, just your feet, step by step, hour by hour, through snow and slush and jagged ice. The wind cuts through your coat like it isn't even there. You learn how to walk without slipping, how to fall without hitting your head, how to keep your hands tucked inside your sleeves, or else your fingers go numb, then stiff, then black, and then the work starts. Take tree felling, for example. You and 3 others are given dull axes, too blunt to cut efficiently, too sharp to be safe in frozen hands. You swing in rhythm, chop, step back, swing again. Your breath fogs the air like smoke. Your muscles scream, and the tree doesn't care. It stands there like a judge waiting for you to prove that you're still alive. Once it falls, you strip the branches, saw it into logs, haul them onto a crude wooden sled, drag it back through the forest. Start again. Sometimes you trip. If you break the sled, you're punished. If you fall behind, you're punished. If the guard thinks you're slacking, punished. No medical checks, no first aid. If you split your knuckles open, you wrap them in cloth. If you break a rib, you keep working. If your foot freezes solid, you limp until it's amputated, or until you fall down and stop moving altogether. And if you do fall, you become part of someone else's quota. Then there's mining. If you're sent to a gold mine, or worse, uranium, you descend into the earth with nothing but a pickaxe, a rusted helmet, and a flickering lantern. The air is thick, wet. You can barely breathe. The walls groan. Sometimes they collapse. They don't always bother digging out the bodies. You dig until your fingers bleed, until the sweat freezes to your skin, until you forget what light looks like. There are no safety drills, no protective gear, just damp, poisoned air and broken backs. You swallow dust with every breath. Some men start coughing and never stop. You know those coughs. You recognize the sound of someone dying on their feet. And still, the work continues. If it's canal work, it's worse. You're handed a shovel, a real Soviet masterpiece. Bent, heavy, splintering. The ground is frozen solid. You chip at it like you're attacking the earth for something it did to you personally. Your boots slip. Your knees twist. You shovel until your hands blister and your blisters bleed. Then you dump the dirt into a wheelbarrow and do it again, and again, and again. You see men fall and not get up. Sometimes the guards kick them. Sometimes they don't bother. Sometimes they just look at you and say, "His ration's yours now." You don't feel good about it. You just eat the extra bread and try not to think too hard. The guards watch everything. Some are ex-prisoners themselves, trustees, given power in exchange for cruelty. Others are soldiers, young and bored, who take pleasure in smashing a rib for entertainment. Discipline is swift. A wrong word, a slow step, a dropped tool. Everything is an excuse. You've seen a man beaten for sneezing, another for sitting when he was told to stand, one for using the wrong shovel. Punishment isn't always violence. Sometimes it's removal of food. Sometimes it's hours in the punishment cell, a wooden box with no light, no warmth, and no way to stand or lie down comfortably. They call it the cooler. Some prisoners go in for 3 days. They come out different, if they come out at all. The day crawls. By noon, the sun, if it's out, sits weak and pale above the trees. You're given a short break. Lunch, if you can call it that. Another bowl of balanda, sometimes cold, sometimes frozen. You drink it because your hands are shaking, and the pain in your gut is louder than the pain in your back. Then back to work. The last few hours of the day are a blur. Pain becomes your atmosphere. Time slows. You forget your name. You forget where you were born. All that matters is the next swing, the next shovel, the next breath. At sunset, the guards bark again. Whistles blow. Dogs growl. You march back, not in triumph, not in relief, just in exhaustion. One step at a time. The man next to you is wheezing. Another limps. Someone behind you falls. The line doesn't stop. Back at camp, another count. If the numbers don't match, they'll search, or they'll punish everyone. And if they find a body out there tomorrow, they'll just scratch the name off a clipboard. The day ends, but the pain doesn't. You limp to your barracks, strip off your wet socks, squeeze the blood from your boot lining, lie on your wooden bunk, stare at the ceiling. Tomorrow will be the same. And if you're lucky, just as bad. Because here in the Gulag, the only thing worse than working is not working at all. In the Gulag, belief is dangerous. Not because belief is wrong, but because it's yours. And in a system built entirely on control, any belief that isn't handed to you by the state is a threat. Religion was never officially welcome in the Soviet Union, but in the camps, it became something stranger, something both forbidden and essential. It hid in the shadows. It lived in whispers. It became part prayer, part superstition, and part survival instinct. Out loud, you were supposed to believe in the party. Lenin, Marx, Stalin, you saw their portraits in the administrative barracks, hanging like grim saints. Their slogans were painted on camp walls in chipping red letters. Labor is honor. The motherland sees your work. Through struggle, strength. But no one believed those signs. Not really. Because here in this frozen hell, survival wasn't found in slogans. It was found in ritual, and sometimes in the old gods. Some prisoners still crossed themselves quietly before sleep, a flick of the fingers beneath a blanket. Fast, almost invisible. You didn't see it. Not really. Because seeing it meant hearing the guards drag someone out during the night. Others whispered psalms. One man, a former seminarian, would murmur the Lord's Prayer under his breath while cutting timber. You couldn't hear the words, but you could feel the rhythm in the air. One swing, one verse. Another swing, another line. Like some secret heartbeat pulsing beneath the frost. Crosses weren't allowed, but prisoners made them anyway. Out of twigs, bits of wire, bent nails. They hid them in shoe soles, in coat linings, in hollowed-out bread crusts. Priests, those who hadn't already died, were treated no better than anyone else. Sometimes worse. They were labeled enemies of the people, enemies of progress, of ideology. their black robes replaced with rags, their churches with labor camps. But even in rags, some continued their calling. They baptized with melted snow, gave last rites in whispers, beside latrines, heard confessions under the noise of shovels and pickaxes. There were no altars, no candles, no icons. But there was faith, bent, muted, scarred, but not dead. And then there were the other beliefs, the older ones, the ones that didn't come from books, but from the bones. Superstitions thrived here, not because prisoners were foolish, but because when logic breaks down, ritual steps in to take its place. Some believed that if you saved a crust of bread and slept with it under your pillow, you wouldn't die that night. Others believed that if you saw a raven circling the worksite, someone would collapse before noon. Some muttered charms in languages the guards didn't understand. Bashkir, Tatar, even Old Church Slavonic. Not prayers exactly, just protections. Words passed from grandmother to grandson, whispered into pine trees and frozen hands. And there were omens. To dream of fire meant you'd receive a beating. To drop your spoon meant you'd get sick. To find a coin in the dirt, rare, impossible, meant a letter was coming, or death. Either way, something was on its way. Prisoners invented rituals without even knowing it. One man always stepped with his left foot first in the morning. Another wouldn't speak until he'd washed his hands in snow. Superstitions weren't just quirks. They were anchors. When everything around you, your food, your health, your freedom, was determined by forces you couldn't see or control, superstition gave you back a sliver of agency, a small illusion of choice, of meaning. Then there were stories, tales passed from bunk to bunk like contraband, about men who escaped and survived, about angels who appeared in the forest, about ghosts of prisoners who died but still walked the barracks at night, whispering secrets to the living. One story said that if you carved your name into the barracks wall and lived to see it fade, you'd be released. Another claimed that the snow held memories, that if you screamed into the storm, the wind would carry your voice to your family. You didn't believe it, but you screamed anyway. Even atheists had their rituals. Some spoke to absent mothers while falling asleep. Others clutched photographs until the paper wore thin. A few carved miniature figures, little wooden statues, not saints, not gods, just something to hold. Hope, maybe. There were also men who believed in nothing. Hard men, steel-eyed, dead behind the teeth. They laughed at prayers, spat on the floor when someone crossed themselves, called faith a sickness. But even some of them broke eventually. When the cold wouldn't leave their bones, when the food ran out, when their bunkmate died in the night and no one moved his body until morning. One of them, a man who mocked everyone's beliefs, was seen one night with his eyes closed, muttering something. Not Russian. Not anything anyone recognized. He wouldn't say what it was, and no one asked. Because in the Gulag, whatever kept you breathing was sacred. It didn't matter where it came from. Sometimes it was a verse. Sometimes a curse. Sometimes It was nothing more than the memory of your child's laugh, replayed in your head so often that it started to feel like scripture. The guards hated it. Belief made you unpredictable. It gave you a spine where they wanted mush, a pulse where they wanted obedience. So they crushed it whenever they could, raided bunks, burned hidden papers, mocked rituals, beat the pious. They wanted your faith buried deeper than the mass graves in the woods. But belief is stubborn. It can hide in a scrap of cloth, in a rhyme, in a silence, in the way one prisoner wraps a scarf around another's shoulders when the wind gets too sharp, in the way you stare at the sky, even though there's nothing to see but clouds. Some prisoners said that even in the worst barracks, even in the darkest camps, something good remained. Not light, not warmth, just a thread that kept pulling, even when everything else frayed away. It wasn't always enough, but sometimes it was. You don't look forward to meals in the Gulag. You depend on them. Every bite is fuel, measured, monitored, and never enough. It's not about taste, not about nutrition. It's about survival, about shaving one more day off the sentence without collapsing in the snow. You live by the ration system. The base ration, the minimum, goes to those who meet their work quota. Fail your quota, and your bread is cut. Miss too many days, you're put on the punishment ration. 300 grams of black bread and 1 bowl of warm water with flavoring. A starvation sentence by another name. The bread is dense, sour, roughly the color of a bruise. You chew it slowly, holding it in your mouth for longer than necessary, letting it soften, letting your brain believe there's more coming. You've learned how to make it last. Some nibble the crust first, saving the softer center for later. Some save a bit for midnight, something to dream about. Others trade bread for favors, protection, or scraps of tobacco. Everything in the Gulag can be traded. Bread is currency. Balanda, the soup, changes color, but not much else. Water with hints of millet. A single shard of cabbage floating like a leaf on a puddle. Occasionally, the luck of a greasy meat bone. Usually not. You sip it carefully, trying not to gag on whatever flavor has invaded the pot that day. Burnt, sour, metallic, or just wrong. Sometimes it smells like dishwater. Sometimes it tastes like old nails. You drink it anyway. And when you're lucky, very lucky, there's kasha, boiled grain, buckwheat sometimes, oats, if a shipment went off course and landed in your sector instead of a general's pantry. It's lukewarm, sticky, tasteless, but it fills you. You might even smile, just a little. But mealtime isn't just about eating, it's about being. For a few precious minutes, the work stops, the beatings stop, the howling wind outside goes quiet. The mess hall is a low, long building that smells like boiled socks and overcooked starch. The benches wobble. The tables are stained black with years of spilled balanda and melted candle wax. You sit shoulder to shoulder with men who no longer look like men. Hollow faces, pink, frost-bitten knuckles, eyebrows stiff with ice. No one talks much. Talking takes energy. But occasionally, just occasionally, someone mutters a joke. A dry, bitter joke with no punchline, just pain dressed up in sarcasm. Something like, "They say next week we're getting meat, right after Stalin learns to fly." Someone chuckles. Someone else mutters, "Careful." There are informers, after all. But sometimes the laughter wins anyway. Tiny moments of defiance, like smuggling joy past the guards. Entertainment is rare, but not non-existent. There are camp cultural brigades, a term so absurd it feels like a bad joke itself. The administration sends in performers, prisoners usually, musicians, actors, writers, not out of kindness, but propaganda. The message is clear. Even prisoners can enjoy art under socialism. So, once a month, maybe once a season, you're herded into a room and forced to sit through a concert. An accordion player with frost-bitten fingers, a former opera singer whose voice trembles from malnutrition, a poet reciting state-approved verses about resilience, Stalin, and the motherland. You clap. You pretend. Because clapping is safer than being pulled from the audience and interrogated for cultural hostility. But behind the curtain, literally behind the crumbling stage, real performances sometimes happen. The old songs, the banned verses, the off-color jokes about guards and lice and latrines, performed in whispers, passed from ear to ear like secret prayers. Sometimes there's a balalaika, smuggled in pieces, reassembled with string and glue. Sometimes someone makes a flute from a pipe. Sometimes a man taps rhythms on a metal cup that make your chest ache with memory. And for 5 minutes, you forget where you are. You're not in a labor camp. You're in a village under a summer sky. You're dancing. You're kissing your wife. You're drinking tea and swatting flies and complaining about the neighbor's cow. Then the song ends, and the walls return. There are unofficial entertainments too. Fights, theft, gambling, played with buttons, crusts, scraps of tobacco. Some men bet on card games made from cigarette papers. Others tell fortunes by reading palms under the mess table. Most of it is nonsense. But in a place where the future barely exists, nonsense can feel like meaning. Sometimes there are talkers, the prisoners with stories, the ones who once read books, traveled, lived. They tell tales of Paris, of Leningrad, of parties, novels, cafes. They recite Pushkin, Tolstoy, the occasional filthy joke from Gogol. Men gather around, quiet, listening not for facts, but escape. And when the stories end, everyone stares at the floor for a while. The most powerful entertainment of all is a letter. When mail arrives, which isn't often, it's like a comet flashing across the black sky of camp life. Everything stops. Names are read. Most men don't get one. But if you do, if your name is called, you feel it in your gut. You hold the paper in shaking hands. You don't read it right away. You savor it, like bread. Then you read it over and over. Even if it's just 2 lines from a wife you haven't seen in 5 years. Even if it's a mother saying nothing except, "We are alive. We think of you." You fold the letter and tuck it inside your coat, close to your chest, close to your ribs, close to what's left of you. Entertainment in the Gulag isn't about joy. It's about not going mad. It's about remembering that there's still a world outside of fences and frost. It's a whispered joke, a borrowed tune, a poem scratched on a wall, a game of cards played with bent matchsticks. It's a way to pass the time, when time itself feels like a life sentence. You can feel it in your chest before you even open your eyes. That wet rattle, that sharp little stab between the ribs when you inhale too deep. You try to ignore it. You tell yourself it's just the cold, just the damp, just fatigue. But you know what it is. Illness is always circling in the Gulag, like a wolf, silent, hungry, waiting for you to stop pretending you're strong. Every man here gets sick eventually, and when it comes, it doesn't come gently. The camp is a breeding ground of everything. Lice, fleas, rats, and disease. There's no soap, no heat, no real ventilation. No doctors who aren't also prisoners. No medicine worth the name. A cough spreads faster than rumors. A fever means you're about to disappear, either into the infirmary or into the woods. The most common killer? Tuberculosis. You hear it everywhere. That deep, tearing cough in the bunk next to yours. The one that starts at dusk and doesn't stop until dawn. The man behind it clutches his chest, turns blue in the lips, bleeds into his handkerchief, and then eventually just disappears. Some say the guards take them out to die in a hole. Others say they simply stop moving one night, and no one bothers dragging the body out until morning. Scurvy is next. You've seen it. The gums swelling, teeth loosening and falling out. Legs covered in purple bruises, like the skin itself is giving up. You try to chew pine needles sometimes, just in case. You heard it helps, but nothing really helps. The bread is stale. The soup is water. You haven't seen a real vegetable in a year. Then there's dysentery. When it hits hard. You lose everything. Fluids, strength, dignity. You spend hours in the latrine, curled up on a frozen plank of wood. Your body shaking so hard, you think your soul might come loose. No one helps you. Not because they're cruel, because they can't afford to get close. Sickness is contagious. And in the Gulag, it's dangerous to care. If you collapse during work, you risk being labeled as a shirker. If you stop showing up, your ration is cut. If you stop walking altogether, you might get kicked, or shot, or simply left behind. The hospital is worse than the barracks. A few wooden beds, a stove that almost never works. One nurse, maybe two, both prisoners. One might have been a veterinarian before the arrest. The other, a student. Or maybe she just said that. There are no painkillers, no antibiotics, no bandages unless you tear up your own shirt. No antiseptic beyond vodka, and that's only if you bribe the right guard. You lie there, wrapped in a lice-filled blanket that dozens of others have died under. The man in the bed beside you mutters in his sleep. The one on the floor hasn't moved since yesterday. The nurse does what she can. She boils water. She applies compresses. She whispers prayers under her breath, even though she pretends not to believe in God. Sometimes she tells you you'll be fine. You thank her even when you know it's a lie. There's no privacy in death. When a man dies in the hospital, they wrap him in a sheet, if there's one available, and carry him out before the body stiffens. They keep a tally. Not names, just numbers. The body is buried in a shallow grave outside the fence. If the ground is too frozen, They store him in a shed with the others. Sometimes weeks go by before the earth softens enough to dig. And the worst part? There's no ceremony, no marker, no name carved into wood. You just vanish, swallowed by snow and silence. And still, you're afraid to report sick. Because the moment you do, you become useless. And useless men in the Gulag don't live long. So you pretend. You hide the fever. You walk slower. You lean on the shovel when the guard's not looking. You bite your tongue and dig your fingernails into your palms to stay upright. You keep going, even if your vision blurs, even if your lungs feel like they're full of stones, because lying in the infirmary is dangerous. But stopping work? That's a death sentence. Some prisoners self-treat with scraps of folklore and desperation. Boil pine bark for tea. Chew raw garlic, if you can steal it. Rub vodka on a rash. Wrap a broken finger to a spoon and pray it sets straight. There's always someone in the barracks who claims to know something. An old peasant who once worked with herbs. A former nurse who remembers how to stitch a wound using horsehair. A soldier who swears that chewing birch bark can stop bleeding. You try it. You try everything. Because no one's coming to save you. The guards won't help. The state won't send medicine. The world doesn't know you're here. And even if it did, would it care? You're terrified of death. But after a while, the fear changes. It becomes tired. Not dramatic, not panicked, just heavy. You watch men die every week, sometimes every day. You see them shrink, fade, turn gray. You see them forget their names, forget their stories. One day they're quoting Pushkin in the snow. The next day, they're curled into themselves, whispering "Mama" over and over again. And the day after that, they're gone. Death is not loud in the Gulag. It is quiet, slow, bureaucratic. A line on a form, a pair of boots redistributed to someone else, a ration card erased with a pencil. You've made peace with the idea that no one will remember you. Not here, not later. You dream of dying with your boots off, on a real bed, with someone holding your hand, with music playing. But that's not how it works here. Here you die in line. You die mid-sentence. You die while still gripping your shovel because you were too afraid to let go, and yet you still fight it. Every day, every miserable, gasping, painful day, you fight. Because even though the camp has taken everything, your health, your dignity, your voice, it hasn't taken the part of you that refuses. You still wake up. You still eat the bread. You still swing the axe. You still stare at the sky and wonder if someone is staring back. You're not free, but you're not dead. Not yet. And in the Gulag, that counts for something. You might think of the Gulag as a place of men, shovels, boots, beards, broken backs. But that's only half the story. Because there were women here too. Tens of thousands of them. Political prisoners. Wives of traitors. Teachers. Peasants. Nurses. Nuns. Poets. Teenagers. Mothers. Pregnant women. And yes, even children. They didn't build a different system for women. They just shoved them into the same one. Same cold, same starvation, same beatings, but with different kinds of humiliation. Women's barracks weren't any warmer. The bunks weren't softer. The bread wasn't thicker. If anything, it was worse. Because in addition to the frostbite, the lice, the disease, there was also the constant threat of being watched. Guards, informers, other prisoners, always watching. If you were beautiful, you became a target. If you were young, you became a target. If you had a body, you became a target. Some women formed protection relationships with male prisoners or guards, exchanges of food or favor for a blanket of safety. Others had no choice. Rape was common, sometimes hidden, sometimes institutional. You learned to stay silent, to sleep in the corners, to wear your scarf low and your eyes lower. And if you became pregnant, that was its own sentence. The camp rarely provided prenatal care. No doctors, no midwives, just a wooden floor, a rusty knife, and the prayers of whoever was brave enough to help. Some children were born in the camps, born into snow and silence. Some were sent away to orphanages that might be just as grim. Others stayed with their mothers until weaning, then vanished into the machine of the Soviet state. A few women tried to keep track, writing down birth dates on scraps of cloth, whispering lullabies into the dark, tattooing names onto their own arms, just in case no one else would remember. And yet somehow, there was still love, even here. Women formed family units, shared food, held each other through fever dreams, took turns scratching lice from each other's scalps and whispering stories to fight off madness. They made combs out of bone, needles from fish spines, thread from mattress stuffing. With these, they mended each other's clothing, sewed secret pockets, stitched tiny pieces of normalcy back into their lives. They wrote poetry in the margins of ration slips. Some kept diaries, hidden under floorboards, wrapped in oilcloth, knowing they might never be read. Others recited books aloud from memory, line by line, so no one would forget what words were supposed to sound like. Motherhood did not stop in the camps, even for women without children. They mothered the sick, the old, the too young to be here girls with frost-bitten fingers and eyes wide with fear. They taught how to hide bread, how to pretend you weren't listening, how to sit still while someone searched your body for a note, a cross, a memory, how to grieve without sound. There were stories of women forming choirs, quiet ones, singing under their breath as they marched to work. Not defiant songs, just sad ones, soft ones, folk songs from villages that no longer existed. One woman was known for braiding hair. No mirror, just fingers and memory. She'd sit behind a bunkmate and braid slowly, as if that act alone could remind someone they were still a person. Another woman, once a midwife, created dolls out of rags, tiny ones. No eyes, no faces, just bundles of warmth. She gave them to pregnant women, called them good luck charms, called them quiet babies. For many women, the worst part wasn't the labor. It was the separation, being torn from children, from husbands, from sisters. Some hadn't seen their families in 10 years. Some never would. Letters, when they arrived, were life itself. If you got one, you read it until it disintegrated. If you didn't, you lied and said you had. The guards sometimes gave mail as rewards. Sometimes they burned it in front of you just to watch. Family visits were rare, almost impossible. A few lucky prisoners saw their spouses once every few years, separated by glass, surrounded by guards, given 15 minutes to remember how to be human together. Most just held on to memories, carried them like talismans. The way your daughter said your name, the way your husband held his spoon, the smell of soup on a quiet day. You carried these inside you, because that's all the family you had left. Children weren't common in the camps, but they existed. Some were born there. Others were sentenced alongside parents. Whole families arrested together during purges. Branded as sons of traitors, daughters of kulaks, social parasites. Too small to work, too old to be carried. They lived in limbo. They slept in special blocks, when available. They received smaller rations. They learned early. Don't cry. Don't speak. Don't ask questions. If they survived to age 14, they were often promoted to full prisoners, given a pickaxe, a quota, a number. You saw their eyes, the way they scanned every guard's face for danger, every crack in the floor for scraps. They grew old fast, too fast. Some women tried to shield them, shared bread, taught them songs, told them stories about trees, about holidays, about kindness, told them that the world used to be different, that people used to hug, that laughter used to be real. Even inside the Gulag, there was a longing for family, for warmth, for recognition. You'd hear men in the barracks whispering their wives' names in their sleep. You'd hear women humming lullabies to bunkmates who hadn't spoken in days. And when someone died, a few would quietly say, "He had a son in Kiev. I think his name was Mikhail," as if saying the name out loud might carry it back into the world. The camps were built to erase identity, to grind people down into tools, numbers, labor units. But families, no matter how broken, left traces in the way someone folded their shirt, in the way they smoothed another's hair, in the way they stared at the sky as if looking for a face they hadn't seen in years, in the way they refused to forget, even when remembering hurt more than anything else. Afternoons in the Gulag aren't just a second shift of labor. They're the hours where the real battles begin, not just between man and the elements, but man against man. Because once your body is exhausted, once the last calorie is burned and your boots are soaked with melted snow, then you face the other prisoners. And that's when the real hunger shows its teeth. There is a hierarchy in the camps, not official, not written, but known and brutal. At the top are the blatni, the professional criminals, thieves, smugglers, gangsters. In many camps, they run everything. Not the guards, not the officers. Them. They steal, they beat, they extort. And they do it all with impunity. Why? Because they're useful. Guards use them to keep order, to control the politicals, to deliver punishments the administration doesn't want its name on. It's an old system. Outsource cruelty to those who enjoy it. If you're a political prisoner, a teacher, a poet, a priest, a mother of 5. You're at the bottom of the pile. You're soft, educated, not real. You don't know how to fight, how to bluff, how to stab someone with a spoon handle and make it look like an accident. So you get used. For food, for labor, for humiliation. You've heard of blanket parties, where politicals are jumped in the barracks, beaten with soap bars wrapped in rags so the bruises don't show. You've seen men held down and stripped, their bread taken, their boots stolen, and if they complain, the guards laugh. Because the guards know exactly what's happening. In fact, sometimes they organize it. Afternoons are full of minor violence, quiet cruelty, a shoulder checked too hard in the food line, a bowl knocked over by accident, a stolen coat, a bunkmate who wakes up with a bruise and no memory of how it got there. And then there's the real violence. Fights break out in the yard, over tobacco, over bread, over nothing at all. A man stabs another with a sharpened toothbrush. A thief is caught red-handed and has his fingers crushed with a shovel handle. Someone is dragged to the punishment pit and left there overnight in a storm. Someone else is never seen again. You learn quickly where to look and where not to. You learn which faces mean trouble and which faces are just masks for people trying to make it to next week. You learn to keep your head down, but not too far down, because weakness is a smell. And in the Gulag, everyone's nose is sharp. Some prisoners collaborate to survive. They spy, report, snitch. They write notes about their neighbors, whisper names to guards, trade secrets for soup, a name for a second blanket, a rumor for an extra spoon of kasha. Some do it to live. Some do it because they believe in the system. Some just enjoy the power. The worst betrayal is often the quietest. You confide in someone. You speak of home, of politics, of loss. And the next day, you're called in for questioning. The camp's internal police, operativniki, don't need evidence. They need stories. Your name ends up in a folder. Your file grows. And so do your problems. The punishment for anti-Soviet agitation? Extra work, less food, isolation, or just disappearance. The punishment cells, carcery, are wooden boxes, sometimes buried in the ground, sometimes raised and exposed to the wind. You crouch in them for days. No heat, no food, no water. Some never walk straight again after coming out. Some never come out at all. There are collective punishments, too. If someone escapes, everyone suffers. No one eats until they're found. You've felt that silence, the kind that hangs in the air after an escape attempt. The guards don't scream, they wait. And then they act. Random bunk searches, strip searches, beatings, the yard closed for a week, food cut, letters held back. One man tries to hang himself with a belt. Another tries to run and is shot in the back. Everyone goes quiet again. The rules in the camp are arbitrary. Some are written, most are not. You can be punished for walking too slow, for working too fast, for looking at a guard, for not looking at a guard, for singing, for silence, for being noticed. The system doesn't want order. It wants instability. It wants prisoners watching each other. It wants fear to do the heavy lifting. Even the guards are caught in it. Some are terrified of being reassigned to a worse post, of being denounced, of being accused of softness. So they overcorrect. They hit harder. They shout louder. They turn every petty offense into a spectacle. It's a theater of cruelty, and everyone has a role. Some play it well. Others vanish between acts. And yet, somehow, prisoners still find ways to resist. Small rebellions, a smuggled book, a hidden diary, a joke whispered in the dark, a fist clenched just once behind a guard's back. Sometimes a group of prisoners bands together, forms a circle, protects the weakest, shares food, defends one another. But it's dangerous. Too much unity, and the guards notice. You're split up, transferred, separated. They hate solidarity almost as much as they hate disobedience. But still, it happens. And every act of kindness in the camp is a form of rebellion. A piece of bread passed quietly under the table. A sick man's work quota secretly finished by a friend. A comb made from scrap metal. A lullaby sung under breath. In the afternoon, when your muscles are lead and your eyes feel made of sand, when the guards are watching and the criminals are circling and the world has shrunk to a single block of ice, that's when you learn who you are. Not by what you say, but by what you protect. Even when it hurts. Even when no one is looking. Especially then. Night does not bring rest in the Gulag. It brings a pause, but not peace. The day's labor is over, yes. The tools are stacked. The worksite silent. The guards are less visible. But fear has its own schedule, and night is when it punches in. You return to your barracks after roll call, feet dragging, head low, limbs trembling. The path is lit by thin strands of electric light, barely cutting through the dark. Shadows stretch like wire across the frozen ground. Dogs growl from inside guard posts. The towers watch, motionless. You don't speak. You've used all your words already. Inside the barrack, the temperature hits you like a slap. The stove's gone cold. The few embers left glow like dying stars. Everyone rushes to strip off wet socks, squeeze out sweat, swear at nothing. You hang your coat on a nail, if you're lucky enough to have a nail. Otherwise, it goes under your head. It becomes your pillow. Boots come off. Slowly, painfully, socks peel down. Steam rises from feet swollen and cracked. Some toes are black. One man pours vodka on a blister. He doesn't scream. He just bites his sleeve. There's no bath. No real washing. You scrape dirt off your face with a chunk of snow. Wipe your nose with a sleeve. Hope the lice crawl somewhere else tonight. A few men murmur quietly. Talk about food. About home. About women. But not in a romantic way. More like an archaeological dig. As if they're trying to remember what women are. Some tell stories. One prisoner recites a poem. Half-remembered lines from memory. Pushkin. Maybe. or just something he's inventing to keep from slipping. Another man sings, not loudly, just a hum, barely above a breath. It's not for you, it's for himself. Then silence, the kind of silence that doesn't comfort. It presses. You lie on your bunk, flat wooden plank, no mattress, no blanket, unless you've bargained for one. Just your coat, maybe your hat pulled low over your face. You curl on your side, tuck your knees in. The room smells of old men and old sorrow. Feet, smoke, wet wool, piss, blood. Someone near you is coughing. That deep, wet cough that never gets better. You pretend not to hear it. So does everyone else. A man down the row starts muttering in his sleep. Another one moans. The lights snap off, darkness. But you don't sleep, not yet. Because night is when the camp changes. No more orders, no more quotas, just hunger and hierarchy. The Blotny, the criminals, own the night. They wander between bunks. They whisper, they laugh. Sometimes they take. A ration hidden in a sock, a coat left unwatched, a man's boots gone by morning. Sometimes they hurt people. You hear it. A grunt, a shuffle, a choked yelp. Someone's being beaten. Someone else is watching. And you? You keep still, because if you move, if you breathe too loudly, you might be next. There are informers in the dark, too. Men who pretend to sleep, but whose ears are sharp. They listen for everything. Names, complaints, prayers. They'll whisper it to the guards in the morning. Trade it for an extra piece of bread, maybe a cigarette. So you say nothing, not even in your dreams. The punishment cells are nearby. You've heard men scream inside them, just once. Then silence. Sometimes, at night, the guards come. Boots on wood, voices low. They open the barrack door, let the cold rush in like a ghost. They read a name. If it's not yours, you stay very still. If it is yours, you stand. You follow. No one ever asks where the prisoner is going. There's no trial, no explanation. Some return. Most don't. You think about escape. Everyone does, eventually. But it's a fantasy. Where would you go? Hundreds of kilometers of forest. Snow up to your chest. Wolves. No food, no map, no shoes sturdy enough. And even if you made it, where? Home? Does that even exist anymore? So you lie still. Try to sleep. Try to remember warmth. Not just physical warmth, but human warmth. A voice calling your name. A hand brushing yours. A plate of soup just for you. But the cold always wins. Your toes are numb again. You flex them just to prove they're still there. You scratch your thigh. Lice. You pull your coat tighter. And finally, you slip. Not into real sleep, but into that half place. That shallow trench where exhaustion mimics rest. You dream. But the dreams aren't gentle. They're sharp, fast, flickering. You're in a city but can't find your way home. You're holding your child, but they don't recognize you. You're eating and wake up chewing on nothing. Some men talk in their sleep, some cry. One man, an old teacher, shouts equations over and over, as if math might get him out. Another whispers his mother's name like it's a password. You roll over, bump into the wall. Cold, hard, always there. You close your eyes tighter and pray you don't wake up in the middle of the night needing to piss, because the latrine is 60 meters away. No light, no escort, just boots over snow and whatever's hiding between the barracks. You've heard stories, men stabbed, men shot accidentally, men who slipped on the ice and were found in the morning, frozen, eyes wide open, staring at nothing. So you hold it until your stomach hurts, until your bladder aches, until the cold gives you a choice. Stay warm or relieve yourself, but not both. This is what night means in the Gulag. A time of risk, a time of reckoning, a time when the fences don't need to hold you anymore because your own body has become the prison. But somehow, even here, sleep eventually comes. Not because you're safe, but because you're too tired to keep resisting. And in that sleep, there's a quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow, you'll wake up, and it won't be here. You made it through the day, somehow. The cold didn't kill you. The hunger didn't crush you. The guards didn't notice you. The night didn't choose you. You're still here. That's how survival worked in the Gulag. Not by strength, not by pride, just by lasting. One more day, one more breath, one more quiet refusal to fall apart. You don't win here. No one does. There are no heroes in the Gulag, just people, forgotten, frozen, folded into the pages of history under footnotes and euphemisms. Corrective labor, anti-Soviet elements, re-education through work. But tonight, we've seen the truth behind those phrases. You've felt it. The plank beneath your back, the saltless soup in your bowl, the wind slipping through the walls, the cough that doesn't stop, the boots you can't take off because the skin might come with them. You've lived this, if only in imagination, and that's more than most ever will. Millions of people passed through the Gulag system, some for stealing bread, some for telling a joke, some for fighting injustice, and some for no reason at all. They were marched across endless snowfields, tossed into mines, forests, swamps, made to build things that would never last, for people they'd never meet, under a sky that never softened. And yet, despite it all, they still remained human. They still remembered their children's names, still whispered poetry, still saved bread for their bunkmate, still sang, even if no one else could hear it. That is what survival looked like. Not glorious, not dramatic, just slow, stubborn dignity. So tonight, as you lie in your warm bed, on a soft mattress, under clean sheets, maybe with a fan humming or a soft lamp glowing, think of the contrast. No guards watching you, no barbed wire outside your window, no roll call, no ration card, You can drink when you're thirsty, stand when you want, laugh, speak, cry without fear of punishment. You're free. And that's not nothing. Freedom isn't fireworks or declarations. Sometimes it's just hot water, or dry socks, or the ability to close your eyes without worrying who might be waiting when you open them again. The people who lived through the Gulag weren't characters in a book. They were real. They had hopes, jokes, pets, favorite songs, bad handwriting, dreams. And then one day, someone knocked on the door at night, and they were erased. Some came home, but most didn't. Those who did never came back the same. Some refused to speak of it ever again. Others tried to tell the truth and were ignored, or silenced again by systems that didn't want to hear it. But tonight, in this long, slow journey into another life, we remembered them. Not just the facts, not just the numbers. We remembered what it felt like to be them, to wake up in the cold, to swing an axe with no strength left, to eat a meal that wouldn't fill a child's hand, to sleep beside strangers and listen for the next knock in the dark. You carried that weight for a little while, and now it's okay to let it go. Let it fall away with the frost. Let it dissolve into quiet. Because you're not in the Gulag. You're here, in your room, in your body, in your breath. Take a slow inhale. Feel the warmth of the blanket around you, the softness of the bed, the stillness of the room. No footsteps, no shouting, just you and this silence. Not the silence of fear, but the kind that holds you, rocks you, wraps around you like a whisper saying, "You are safe, you are home, you are free." You don't have to wake up to a quota, or march through the snow, or memorize your prisoner number. You can dream about anything. Tomorrow can be anything. That's the gift we carry without knowing. And maybe tonight, we've learned to treasure it just a little more. So now, as your breathing slows, as your thoughts start to melt into the softness of sleep, as your body forgets the hunger and cold we wandered through tonight, let yourself drift. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw relax. There's nothing else to do, nowhere else to be. You made it. So tonight, as you drift off, remember, you don't have to wake up in the Gulag. Sleep well.